All right. Well, hello, everyone. This is Tracy, Amplify's Marketing Manager. I want to thank everyone for joining this next Ask the Experts webinar. The topic today is that we're discussing understanding SKU generation with EnterWorks. As you know, when registering for this webinar, you had the option to pre-submit questions, which we will be answering today. Thank you to all that submitted their questions. Yes, this session is being recorded and will be distributed to everyone by the end of the day or in the next few days by email, or you can also find it on our website at goamplify.com. During the presentation, you have the ability to submit questions through the Q&A feature. However, due to our limited time and the complexity of our scenarios, we will follow up after your questions, after all of the questions have been answered, if we have time, or we will follow up via email to ensure that we have all of your questions answered. Without further ado, let's get to know our experts. All right, up first we have Eric. Eric Gilboe is the principal architect at Amplify. He brings more than 10 years of PIM MDM experience to the table as a business user, IT lead, and consultant. He began working with EnterWorks in 2012 when Fender Musical Instruments implemented Enable as part of their new data strategy. He has completed successful Enable implementations for the food, auto, retail, and manufacturing verticals. Eric's primary focus is around building a better and more flexible business user experience around data management while staying true to IT and core governance principles. Michael Ayanwale is the EnterWorks practice lead here at Amplify. He's responsible for solution and technical design for Amplify delivery teams. He is a thought leader and an MDM expert. He ensures that client solutions are both functional and scalable for present and future initiatives. His strong strategic and technical skill sets with leadership qualities helps to bolster Amplify teammates around him and instill confidence with clients and partners. Sanchit Grover from Winshuttle leads the Global Solutions Engineering team at EnterWorks. Responsible for driving technical sales and delivering differentiated solutions to customers, he brings experience designing MDM solutions and creating data strategies for some of the largest brands in retail, distribution, and manufacturing. Grover worked previously with Magnitude Software, Deloitte, Stebo Systems, and Sapient Nitro. His areas of focus include MDM and data governance. All right, I'm gonna hand it off to Michael, and he's gonna give us a bit of an intro spiel for EnterWorks and SKU Generation.
Perfect. Thank you, Tracy, for that great handover. And thanks again for everyone for joining. I'm definitely excited to talk about SKU Explosion and how you can use it to help solve your current business needs. We can go to the next slide. So first, I just want to give you a brief definition or description of what SKU Explosion is within the EnterWorks platform. And really what it allows you to do is it gives you the ability to generate multiple versions of a SKU that is linked to a parent object. So an example of a variant object that you may have at the parent level could be size, color, or serving temperature. But this capability allows you to generate a SKU based on that variant value. So an example could be a latte that has a serving size, serving temperature as hot or cold, or a size as tall, grande, venti, or even caffeine types as caffeinated or decaffeinated. And it can also be expanded to other use cases as in regards to apparel, so size or color. Next slide. And when it's typically used for use cases that involves a retail or quick service restaurants, manufacturing. But what this component allows you to do is quickly explode and create SKUs. So it can definitely increase your time to value when creating and enriching SKUs in the EnterWorks platform. And it's also an intuitive way to enrich and create SKUs for your business users. And you will see some of that in our examples that we have outlined in today's session. Next slide. So here's just an example of, we have a product, and it's this Hanes men's sweater. It's a 4-pack shirt. And we have a description, which is an attribute with some values. And then we also have the price and the material. To your right, you see the size and color. And these two attributes are the variant attributes. So basically how SKU Explosion would work, the user could select a size, so small or large, or they could select all of these sizes that may be available for this particular product. And likewise for the color, they could select individual colors, or they could select all. And then what SKU Explosion allows you to do in the EnterWorks platform is to create those multiple SKUs. So for example, if you were to create or add 6 sizes that we have listed on the slide, and also add 6 colors, you would have 36 different variations of SKUs that are tied back to the product. And then with that, you can inherit all the attributes. So the description, the price, material, and so on. So if you look at it from a business perspective, if it's taking you, a minute or 2 minutes to create each individual SKU, well, if you have 36 SKUs that you need to create, at 2 minutes per SKU, you're looking at over an hour, right? So definitely it gives you ability to cut down your workload and easily create SKUs in a fashionable way. So next slide. So there are some data model prerequisites that you have to have within your data model for this to be enabled. So there has to be a parent-child relationship. So a product to a SKU or a product to an item. You also need to have variant attributes defined, your variant attributes defined as a variant. So we have a screenshot that shows you that. The variant attributes at the parent level needs to be defined as repeatable. So that basically makes sense, right? So if you have color and you have the option to select multiple colors, you will do that at the parent level. But at the child level, those attributes or those variant attributes should not be repeatable, because those are the individual SKUs that are being generated. The next slide. So some more prerequisites. The parent and child repository must have the same variant attributions configured. You at least need one variant attribute to be category specific. But this is for scenarios where you have the variant or a category attribute that is linked to a taxonomy node in your product taxonomy. And then the parent and child repositories must share the same taxonomy within the EnterWorks platform. And we have a screenshot below of where we have 2 different repositories or 2 different profiles, so the retail product and SKUs, but they're sharing both the same taxonomy. And then the parent-child repositories are required to have the same category dynamic association. Next slide, please.
All right, Michael, well, that takes us to our first question. So we're starting off with the first question as, I have an attribute at the parent level and I need to copy it down to the SKU. How do I do that?
Perfect, great question. So for this particular use case, I would say that you could use a simple functionality where you just need to copy a value from the parent down to the item or SKU. And you definitely have that capability in EnterWorks. And let me share my screen. All right, perfect. So there is a business rule that you can apply to the child object where you need to inherit that value. And we go to profile. So the callout feature is the update distinct child values. And this property allows you to inherit the value from the product to the SKU. For example, we have the retail product, and then we have the name of the attribute for the parent that we are copying the value from, and then we are applying that value to the SKU name. For this particular rule, we have it as conditional, so that's why we have this update SKUs as yes or no. It's a question that the user will answer. And then if they click or select yes, they will have the option or the ability to inherit that value from the parent. So I'm going to pass it over to Eric. He's going to demonstrate how that works in the tool. So hand it over to Eric.
So when we look at that option, pull that up here. And we have that assigned to an attribute within a repository. And when you make that change to the attribute within the repository at the parent level, it will pull the data over to the child repository if you've set the value to yes for that component. Let's just make sure that we have that rule turned on. And that's actually in our retail environment here. So one thing to keep in mind, obviously, with your rules is that if you don't have the rule turned on within a repository, then obviously it would not work at that point. Let's go into our record here. And Michael, you place this in the retail SKU repository, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have our rule turned on. And if we go to our data, you've got this option here to update SKUs.
That's correct. So
go ahead.
Yes, it's conditional. Yeah, so it's conditional. So if you select yes, then trigger the rule to update that particular SKU. Yeah.
So what we would do is before, to show the difference, we're going to look at the product level version of this particular product, which we can see the product ID. And maybe I'm going to go in here and make a change to this product. We'll make sure that we don't generate a bunch of new variants or anything like that at this point. So I'm going to make sure that's turned off, because we don't want to create a whole bunch of new variants. We just want to make sure that we make our update here to the product value. So maybe if I change this product name and add, an additional value here, save it. Then what we'll see is if I set the value here to yes and save this record, it's going to pull that data over to the SKU name and make the change. So you can see that pull that product information over. So in this case, this is kind of a precursor to that SKU explosion concept. What you're doing is you're really mapping data over from the existing records down the chain. You can use the same concept when you kind of do SKU explosion to pull a lot of this data over from the parent to the child as well. So it's kind of a useful rule, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the whole SKU explosion concept. And the other advantage here is if I choose no to update this, if I realize that I don't want this test 1, 2, 3 value in here, and I make the change, then as a business user, I have the ability to change at the lower level, right? So I could make that change at the retail SKU description for this particular product, and have the product level still maintain that different description with my test 1, 2, 3. So it allows you to differentiate here without causing any issues at the parent level, and adapt and pull down the parent level data when you want to make that change. So it gives you a lot of flexibility from a data management standpoint as well. So let's stop my share here. Michael, any other thoughts around this, or Sanchit, any thoughts?
Yeah, sure. One of the things you covered, actually, I want to reiterate on that is, yes, we can inherit all the attributes from the product to the SKU level, but you have the complete flexibility to to override those at the child level. One example I'll give you for that is descriptions. Some of the apparel companies, when they are doing one same T-shirt in multiple sizes and colors, but some of those colors are their key colors, and they're sort of the colors they want to focus on. So they sometimes write separate marketing copies for those colors in specific sizes. So you have the complete ability to do so if you wanted to. Somebody's trying to call me at the same time. So you have the complete flexibility of doing that override as needed.
And then if we talk about kind of use cases for this, for copying the data over, I think the one that comes to mind for me is really sort of the taxonomy concept, right? Because we might create a new parent product and we might assign it to a category or taxonomy node. And then we want all the children to inherit that taxonomy node automatically. Otherwise, you have to manually set the taxonomy node for each SKU level, correct? So this would be another good use case for that. So Tracy, I think if we go on to the next question here.
All right.
I'll stop my share.
All right, so question number 2. I need to know all the possibilities of SKUs for a given product. How can I generate all possible SKUs?
And this is essentially the SKU explosion concept, right, at the base level for what we're trying to do. So I kind of liken it back to like when you're in elementary school and you got that initial question about how many different versions of this can I create. Like I think the question I had was, we have 7 pairs of socks, 5 pairs of shorts, and 4 different shirts. How many unique combinations can I make? Which basically for me as a kid translated to how long do I go before I actually have to do laundry, right? But that's the concept behind this SKU explosion is I might have a product that I'm going to create. Let's like take a sofa, for example, and it might have 120 different fabric options that could be in it. It might have 15 different cushion options that could be included in it. It may have some fasteners that are different. It may have quite a few different components that are there. And what I really want to do to start with is just see the realm of possibilities, right? I want to know exactly what I can do and what would be there. And then from there, maybe I'll whittle it down to the products that I'm actually going to sell. But what I want to see is kind of an overarching list of everything I could do. Traditionally, when you're going through the product creation process, that's always been spreadsheets and, passing that back and forth between email and saying, here's what I think the list is. Maybe you've got a complex macro that you're using on a spreadsheet to manage that. And the advantage of this SKU explosion concept is that you can really kind of get to that level very quickly based upon the options. So I'll share my screen here. And we'll take a look at an example of really just including all of the possible using that concept of the SKU explosion. So you can see we have the concept of a product, right? And we had looked earlier at our example product here where we had changed the description and passed that down. And then from that product, it generated a series of SKUs that were available. Now this list that I created was based upon specific values at the parent level. So I restricted it a little bit more. But let's say I wanted to create a brand new product. I would go over to my product level here, and I'm going to create a brand new product that's going to be whatever name I want to call that. So we'll call this Eric's Test Iron or Test Product. All right. So I've got my test product here. I might have a description. This is my test product. So maybe it's before I even have an idea of what this is going to be, but maybe I'm going to give some core information about what that product is going to be. And then we'll go over to our concept here of taxonomy, which, move that out of the way. If we grab, in this case, I'm going to use the concept of food, different types of food. So we'll use sandwiches as our example.
Eric, I believe we lost your screen.
Oh, let me share again, one moment. Sorry about that. Let me share this back up. One too many clicks. There we go. Okay. So you can see I selected this concept of sandwiches, right? So that's in our taxonomy node. And sandwiches has a specific list of attributes that are associated with it. So if I go over to my concept of variance here, what I could do is if I wanted all possible options, I could literally just go into each one of these attributes and say, hey, it's going to be available in all these different bread types, right? So I'm going to add that together. I'm going to add all the different cheese options that could possibly be in there. And just go on down the line. And for each one of these attributes that's important to me, I'm going to create every possible option. And we'll continue down the line, right, for every single one of these that, that could be available. And so if I continue through all of these attributes, I could add every single one of those options there. And then what it's going to do is it's going to generate based upon that multiplication principle, right, from elementary school, where it's going to say, I have this many options here, this many options here, this many options here, and it's going to multiply all those together, and it's going to literally generate a SKU for each option. Now, this is really useful, right, because you can get your master list, but you can see that that could quickly turn into, you know, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million possibilities that could be created. So if you wanted just a quick, you know, view, you might run this at night and generate all of the options and then go in and further narrow it down. And that would be the base use case for this concept of the SKU explosion. But there are ways to kind of configure this and to make it so that you're maybe limiting the number of possibilities as well. And Michael can kind of show some examples on that. So I'll go ahead and stop share, pass it over to Michael.
Thank you, Eric. Let me share my screen. Perfect. So to pick up where Eric left off, what we can, in this particular use case, I'm going to go back to the apparel use case. So the slide that I showed. So I'm going to go to my parent level. So you see we have a product and SKU, and there is a one-to-many relationship between the two. I have my list of products in here. And as you see, we have the product name and some other attributes associated with it. I already have some data in here, but let's say you're an approver in your merchandising team, and whether you create data within Enable or it's a syndication that you get from your source system, you have this information here on the page. We currently don't have any SKUs tied to this particular product, so it's empty. So in this case, there's no errors. I think we're good to go. And you make a decision to continue to scroll down, and now you want to add your varying attributes. So in this case, I have two colors, two sizes, but I want to add additional colors to this model. Blue and red. So I have 5 colors. And let's say that this particular model is available in all sizes. All right. So I have 5 colors. I have 5 sizes as well. So we have this option, create variants, and I have this particular rule tied to a condition as well. And I think best practices is always to have your rules tied to a condition, because you can control when you want it to be triggered, right? So if you don't have that, then that rule will be triggered each time. So you want to put some parameters around that, and a great way is to leverage some easy functionality within the EnterWorks platform. So I'm just going to select this to yes, the create variants, and I'm going to click save. I'm going to click OK, and the expectation is that I have some SKUs. And voila, we have 25 SKUs, right? Because if you do the easy math, we have 5 colors and then also 5 sizes down here at the bottom. If I select one of these particular SKUs, you can see that we have the variant attributes that came from the parent applied, but then we also have some attributes that were inherited as well by the rule. So the good call out here is that you can inherit as many attributes as you need based on your business needs. So there's no limitation to that. And me as a admin user, I have the ability to overwrite. But a valid use case would be maybe an approver is doing this, and now the next step would be for your web team to validate. So these inheritance values could be read-only, right? So they're just there for their review. And now the users don't have the ability to overwrite or edit any of these inherited values. I want to show the actual rule. So, and this is a call out rule that we currently have applied. And this rule is at the parent level. And this is the condition that we currently have tied to this particular rule. So it's really easy to set up if you follow the outline and have your data model set up in a way where it's appropriate to use SKU Explosion.
We had talked a little bit in previous sessions about the business rule types and how those work. So the example that Michael is showing there is what we call a call out, which essentially happens anytime you open the record, right? Anytime you would access the record through the UI. And so the other reason to have that key condition in there is that if someone just happened to open the record, not make any changes to the record, it would fire that rule if you didn't have the additional condition on the rule. So with any call outs, kind of keep that in mind. You always want to make sure that you add additional conditions on there because those happen from the moment you open the record or open up the record within the UI, as opposed to some of the other ones where it only makes it prior to save, or maybe it does a validation only on a validation component, right? So it's very different with those call out rules.
Right. I think this one is a pre-save call out action.
Is it pre-save? Yeah.
One of the things I want to add to what Michael actually showed is, let me give an example. So let's say we go and or are browsing for, let's say, a pair of glasses. That pair of glasses can come in multiple shapes, multiple materials and colors. And what Michael showed in the system using t-shirt was that you can create that variation or the combination of color and size. But what if that one color does not come in those sizes? What if that one glass that I'm selling, let's say, square shaped, metallic, but does not come in a blue or in green color, it only comes in a black and a silver. So in EnterWorks, when you're creating these variations of the rules, you also have that ability to define what controls do we put in place to make sure that the rules don't go outside the bounds. If that's a SKU combination you don't offer, we can have a rule set up to say, okay, anytime this combination ties together, do not generate those SKUs. So that's one of the things that you can configure if you wanted to, not that you have to have every combination out there. Some of these combinations, for example, that Eric, you gave was the sofa example, that could lead to millions of combinations, not necessarily saying that you sell all that. So that there are controls in place where you can control which attributes and which combinations should be generating the SKUs or not generating the SKUs.
And to add to out of the box within the functionality, you have the ability to, when you generate those SKUs, concatenate some of those attribute values that you have and build a description on the fly at the SKU level. So if you don't mind, I'll share my screen here just briefly. And I'll show you an example of how we did that in the demo environment here. So if I look at this product level and I go to the actual properties here associated with this repository, you can see that we have this concept of generate variants built in here. This only appears if you have the configuration set up properly in the profile and you've done some of the background prerequisites that we talked about. And so then it's here and it's set and ready to go. And one of the things you can do is manage the concept of what attribute maps to what component, right, for creating the variance itself. And then you'll notice on this one, what I did was I actually took a whole bunch of the individual variant attributes here, you know, bread type, cheese type, meat type, all those things together, concatenated them together with comma separated concept, and actually applied that to an attribute we're calling SKU name on the SKU level. So what effectively happens is when I create from my product level, and I generate all of the available SKUs, if we look at our example here, this is a good starting point, right, for a description, because now what it's done is it's taken all of the attributes that I have in the configuration component there from parent to create all the SKUs, and it builds my description based on that. Now, I may want to modify this description, right? I might want to make a whole bunch of changes to it, but it gives me a good starting point for all of the features or components that are in there. So you can see, you know, honey oat, American 6-inch, urban garlic, you know. This may not make a whole lot of sense, but you could combine that with the concept that Sanchit had mentioned, where you can add additional rules and regulations to build this SKU description for you based on business rules. So it makes it very configurable, and you can save a lot of time on the amount of work that you have to do because the core data is already built for you when you generate the SKUs. So stop share here. Michael, anything else you want to mention on this particular question, or are we ready to move on?
No, I think you answered it perfectly, so we can move on.
All right, let's share my screen so that we can get on to the next question. Question 3. I need to create SKUs based on predetermined attributes in my system. How do I do this?
So this was actually part of the use case that I just walked through. So let's move on to question number 4.
All right. Can I use SKU Explosion results to manage additional data points like nutrition and allergen information?
That's actually a good question, and the short answer is yes. There's a lot of ways that you can continue to manage the data. So I built an example here where we're kind of going to introduce additional data points after we've generated the initial SKUs, and we've mapped them to different components as well. And then we could basically bring that data across, and now those new SKUs that we create inherit that data point that we want to carry. So I'm going to just share my screen here, and we'll walk through kind of the background on it first and the logic behind it, and then we'll run a sample. So in the case of this retail food company and concept, they have the concept of the product that then generates the SKUs, which we've already seen through our examples here. And then there are ingredients that are associated with those products, right? So if we go back to that concept of our product, we can add specific ingredients to the list. So if I were to go in here and look, oops. Our variants are actually technically ingredients in this case, right? So there's bread, there's cheese, there's meat. All of those components essentially become ingredients within the magic sandwich that I'm building, or the wrap that I'm building, or the salad that I'm building. And so all of these components all have ingredient information, and then they're also going to have additional information about maybe potentially calorie counts and things like that that are important when you're dealing with retail food. So what was created was this concept of retail food ingredients. And so what we did was we took those base ingredient options, so all of the potential options for our sandwich, right? It could be on honey grain oat, it could be on grain wheat, it could have honey mustard, it could have Monterey cheddar bread, it could have pickles. And what we did was we applied data to each one of those ingredients, right? So now we've got total fat content, trans fat, cholesterol, sodium, all of those kinds of things that are in there, right? And we include those in the view. So this becomes really important, especially now with restaurants and the way that it works, where you have to display all of this information and have it available on your menu. Now you could store all this information in one repository of data and manage it in one place. And then we also added the concept in here of allergens as well, because that becomes important, right? Contains eggs, contains fish, contains milk or lactose, and it's related to those same ingredients, because as we know, when you deal with food, it's at the ingredient level, right? And we want to know necessarily if maybe bacon does not contain milk or lactose, and bacon might be a part of my sandwich, but the jalapeno cheese that I put on my sandwich contains milk or lactose. So as we're building this concept of a SKU, right, based on all of these attributes, these things start coming into play at the attribute level. So we need to make sure that we capture them at the attribute level and then bring that back to the material level. And then what we did was we created an in-between repository to link individual SKUs with what we were calling ingredient IDs, which if you look at our retail food ingredient repository, there's a unique value, which we're not actually displaying in this view, but if I drop into an open view, we can see that we created a unique identifier for every ingredient that's in our ingredient table. And so what we're essentially doing is mapping these ingredients back to the individual materials after we create the material. So the first step is to generate this concept of a group of SKUs, right? So I'll go in and I will create a new product. And we'll just keep this really simple. We're just gonna call this Eric's Test 2. I'll just put in some basic details. We'll assign it to sandwiches. So we'll stick with the same taxonomy node, but you can see there are other taxonomies that have been assigned. So there might be specific attributes for drinks or wraps or sliders that might be different than an actual sandwich. So I'll include that in there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to our variant level here. Actually, let's make sure that there's no required fields. No. So we're going to go in and we're going to offer this particular product just to keep it simple. I'm going to just only offer 2 different breads, and maybe we're only going to offer 2 different cheeses, right? Just to keep this simple, so we don't have to generate, you know, a million potential options. We're going to keep it really simple. Maybe we'll add a meat type here. So we'll make this ham. And then maybe we'll also offer an option to add bacon. All right, so we can create 2 different options there. So we're at about 8 options. Let's add a veggie. So maybe we'll offer spinach and banana peppers. And maybe black olives. And then maybe we'll add only 1 type of sauce. We'll go with Chipotle Southwest. And no seasonings or anything else. We're just going to kind of keep it simple. And then for the size options, we'll just say that this is only going to be available in a 6-inch, so we don't generate too many options. And then, just like Michael had demonstrated with the update concept, we've created a concept here where we're only going to generate these variant options if we have a yes option in there. So let me just get this out of my way here. There we go. And so I'm going to go ahead and start generating those options. And you notice it says that it's saving, and that only took just a few seconds because we didn't create too many. And then if I go back to my list here, you notice we've got some new ones that got created. And I've already got my view set up so that my newest SKUs show up first. All right, so I've created all these SKUs. You can see that it's available in the different options that we have. If I go into the SKU level itself, it's got some base data, but it's missing all of my calculated data here. And it's also not really showing me any ingredients yet, right? I don't have all the information in here. I don't have my links to my ingredient info. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the ingredient info, and we're going to add the mapping to actually calculate calories and calculate all that stuff based upon the actual ingredients within the system itself. So what I've done is I've created just a scheduled job that would run, that we could turn on and automate. Obviously, in this case, I'm not automating and I'm just running it once. And you can see that I've got this concept of nutrition calculation, and I've got a concept of mapping the ingredients. And so we would run these maybe one right after the other in an automated fashion normally, but I'm going to go ahead and just kick it off as a non-automated process. And so this first step, what we're doing is we're essentially mapping those ingredients and the data for the ingredients back across to the materials themselves, so that way I now have a direct map of, I've already said it contains these ingredients. Now I have all the associated ingredient data for that at an individual ingredient level, right? So that's kind of the first step, is to be able to say, okay, now I've set it as banana peppers. So here's the general information about banana peppers and the general information from my retail food ingredients repository here for banana peppers. And I could see like the amount of calories, the amount of fat, amount of cholesterol, amount of sodium, that sort of thing. And that's great. That's a great start. for this process. But what we really also want to be able to do is calculate the values. And so the way this is going to work is it's going to run a quick job that will update my retail food ingredient or my retail SKU. So I'm just going to wait for that mapping to get created. And then we'll start to see ingredients mapped here. So now you notice I have a mapping between this material that I created and all the ingredient information for this material. And so I can see that it's got my 9-grain honey oat, bacon, chipotle southwest, and black olives. What I don't have on this record is I don't have this concept of how many calories is this sandwich? What is the total serving size for the sandwich? What is the total fat? What is the saturated fat? What I do have is I've got a list of individual ingredients that tell me that it's 190 calories for the bread, it's 70 calories for the bacon, it's 60 calories for the chipotle southwest dressing, and it's 0 calories, yay, for my black olives, right? So I can have all the black olives I want, as long as it matches something else over here, right, that I don't go over with. So what I need is I need to calculate this. I need to be able to share this on a menu with a potential customer, right? They need to know exactly how many calories are in this sandwich now based on what we did. So what we've created here is a great little concept where it takes that data that we've already loaded in, we've got it based in a table that maintains all the ingredient information, and now we're going to go ahead and calculate all of that nutritional information at the SKU level. So it's actually going to generate the SKU level information for that. So if I run this little job and we wait for just a minute, then what it's going to do is on the SKU level now, we'll start to see actual data points appear for all of these attributes. So the benefit is now you've tied ingredient information, you've tied all of the specific information calculated for that particular sub in this case, or whatever item it is, could be Coke, it could be whatever. And you have all of it available, and then it's available to send downstream and it's tied to it. So let's just see if that job has completed here. Looks like it's in the process of running. So I'm going to go back to my SKU. And if I jump back into the SKU again, we should start to see some of the data populate. You can see down here, it took all the information from our table and populated our table. Now the advantage of doing this is that once you've created all these SKUs, you've done the SKU explosion, you've done the base work, and you've built your table, if anything ever changes in this ingredient level, then you can run that job again to update the total calorie counts on all of your SKUs. So you've effectively automated any changes to base ingredients, right? So, or if there's a new ingredient added, you can add a new ingredient to your process here for your SKU explosion. So if we added, the mystery ingredient, a new dressing type, I could add a new dressing type in here for the ingredient. I could add my information, my associated information, and then in my SKU explosion, I add another option to that code set because those are all managed via code sets. So if we go back to our concept of some of those pieces, let me find, I apologize, we got quite a few different options in here. You notice like what I've got here for bread type, it's all maintained through a base code set with which any of your basic users can set up, right? And so these are the options that are available today. If I add in a new option tomorrow, if I added a new cushion option tomorrow, for example, if I was dealing with furniture, I could add that to this list, and then I could generate SKUs based on that new option. So it makes it very scalable, and it makes it very easy to, add additional data points to the existing SKU explosion. So, Michael, do you have any additional thoughts around this?
I think you definitely showcased this well. The one thought I have is that you see between creating SKUs with a rule and using some of the functionality to automate linking ingredients to SKUs and allergen information is that with these components, you're introducing the ability to increase your time to market, right? And that's one of the things that we hear in a lot of the projects that we're involved on is that how can we reduce our time to create a product or create a SKUs from 30 days to a week or so. So as you can see, with these solutions in place, there's less touch on the user. We're introducing automation by business rules or scheduled imports and exports, and the data is accurate, right? So these are, great techniques that you can use or evaluate to incorporate into your business model.
And I think one of the big takeaways from this as well is this is all out-of-box functionality. So no one had to go in and write special customized code or do anything like that. We are really just using the base core functionality of the EnterWorks tool. And this is available to anyone that has the, I believe all of these components were introduced in version, Sanchit, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was in 8.2, wasn't it, that the SKU Explosion was introduced?
Mm-hmm.
So this
should have the features of SKU Explosion.
Yeah, so quite a bit of flexibility you have within the tool, and we are using all out-of-box components. So it doesn't require a whole bunch of bolt-on components that you need to add on or any kind of customized code.
Right. And one of the other things I want to call out in this whole concept of SKU Explosion, add on to Michael's point of being faster time to market, it is literally a means for you to create those SKUs faster. That does not take away any feature of EnterWorks for you. The SKUs are a separate object by themselves, and they are still, in this case, we're just automating the creation of the SKUs, the hierarchies, the taxonomy, the dynamic attributes, inheritance, everything is still available for you to use. It's just that it's helping you create and manage the SKUs and the relationship between the product and SKU automatically for you using this feature.
So from a business standpoint, it's really kind of the decision you want to make, right, as to how you want to manage this data. Do you want the wide open concept where maybe you're going to create 2 million records and put them into some sort of a pre-staging repository where everyone selects them and determines what's going to be in the next catalog or going to be available as a new product? Or do you want to use attribution to narrow down what the possibilities are from your infinite number of possibilities and then generate only the SKUs that you want? So you've got both options, which I kind of like as well. It's very flexible there.
Another thing that I want to put it out there. Today we discussed the whole topic around SKU generation. That means that's more like a push down from the product to the SKU level. But we understand that some of the retailers, if you're a retailer, right, you may be getting the data at the SKU level itself. So we do have the option to actually reverse the whole process where you have all the SKUs with all the options. You can do a SKU implosion or a pull up where you generate the products from the SKUs. So it's going to combine the SKUs, find out all the common attributes, and then place them on the product and link those SKUs with that product. So that also is an option available. It's just a reverse process of what we discussed. Same principles, everything is the same, just a business rule needs to be switched, and that's it.
So could you use that use case then, say for example, if you're receiving data from a supplier and you want to create that parent-child relationship, but they don't provide it for you, but they do provide attributes that would kind of clue that to you. Could you use that same concept, load all the data first and then generate the parent?
Exactly, yeah. So this is used both on the front and the back end of the process. So when suppliers provide me the data, or if the retailers are getting that data from the manufacturers, on both those sides, I can use the actual flattened SKUs and generate that parent-child relationship as I need to present it to my business.
So that would kind of auto-generate the parent IDs and sort of some of those things that you do traditionally, you would do manually, right? You would find a mapping where these share the same product name and the same, but they have different sizes. So technically, they should be a parent. That will kind of alleviate a lot of that pain right there, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Excellent. And that's also same principle, so it works out of the box the same way. Right? You would just reverse the process, right?
It's just a different business rule. The one that Michael showed, that there's another business rule that does the pull up. There's going to be a condition. Do you want to pull up or not? In terms of setting up, like all the attributes, the variants, the setup remains the same. It's literally a switch of the business rule, and you can pull up the data as well.
Excellent.
Perfect. I think, Tracy, we're going to hand it back over to you.
Yep, we're going to finish this up by asking a couple of questions. I know that one of the questions that I had personally, it sounds like SKU Explosion is something that would create like a lot of SKUs, and I'm just curious if like a new business user could get themselves into some trouble by accidentally creating a SKU explosion. If they did, how would they clean that up?
Try and pray. Now, it's one of those, one of the things you want to keep in mind is because you are generating potentially, if we look at the original concept that I showed, which was 2 million, SKUs, that requires a lot of processing time and thought process around it, right? You don't want to run that during your normal business hours because it's going to take up a lot of bandwidth within your normal business users process that they're going to be doing. So you always want to kind of think about that before you do a mass generation. And then in terms of removing those records, if you do find an error, you notice that when we created the concept of parent to child, there was the inherited attribute of a parent ID that went down the line. So you could delete all of the children and the parents that way if you wanted to do a manual delete. If you did an uh-oh and realized you needed to do a lot of those. I'll pass it over to Sanchit to kind of talk about any other automation principles that you could use there as well.
Yeah, so we can, I was talking before, we can have business rules around what combinations can be generated versus not. So that's one way to control it. Another way that Michael and you, Eric, showed in the demo was using that control attribute, that conditional attribute. Do you want to do it? Yes, no. So even if somebody may have accidentally added all those size and color variations attributes, unless you do that yes or no, the system is not going to execute that. And then on top of that, let's say even if you did that yes, I want to do that, if you had more controls on what options can be combined together or not, that gives you again a control of that second layer of safety net to be able to generate that as well. Now there is one function which could be used when there is system limitations. Then that function is how many SKUs can I link with products? There's a maximum count that you can define. I only want 100 of maximum count of SKUs for my product. So if that's a limit you have set, even though you have violated every other process, that 100 is going to be the last safety net for you to be able to control that. No more than 100 SKUs can be generated for this particular product. So there are certain controls in the product that are built in to be able to control that process.
And the key, I think, with that as well is you could, if you go back one step to the yes/no concept, you can actually through security limit who could even change that field, right? So you may be in a situation where maybe I'm not going to allow most people to do it. I'm going to only let my PIN administrator flip that flag to yes, right? So then you eliminate the number of people that could potentially do that down to maybe a smaller group that would have access.
Yeah, that's actually a great idea. And I know that there's a customer who uses a workflow to make that request to the data steward to be able to generate that attribute, those SKUs. So once you have the attributes, you start the workflow, the data steward goes and flips that flag from no to yes, and then generates that whole process. So there could be controls like that as well. Great point.
So a lot of power in the concept, but you do need to make sure that you use proper data governance principles, right, to be able to avoid any uh-ohs from happening.
Another question is, can I have like assets that are linked to my SKUs now generated?
Yes, sure. So you can have assets linked to your SKUs. There's a couple of ways that you could do this. One of the first things that you can do is upload the assets directly into the DAM master, right? And have a business rule that looks at the SKU number, and that SKU number may also be applied to the file name, or it could be any type of attribute value from the file name that's linked to the SKU. So that way you can use automation logic, right, to link it. There are also use cases where we have customers where they want their content team to really be engaged in validating and reviewing the SKUs. So they manually upload the SKUs or the image to the SKU. So you have that ability as well. within the EnterWorks platform. You guys want to add anything else, or?
I think you covered it.
Yeah.
All right, that's great, guys. So we're gonna close up this session. And in doing so, I want to thank everyone for attending our Ask the Experts topic based on SKU generation in EnterWorks. I also want to thank Eric, Sanchit, and Michael for joining us today. This concludes today's webinar, but as a thank you for attending this Ask the Expert session, we are offering a complimentary one-on-one follow-up session with an expert to answer any specific questions you have aside from those we've already covered today. This expert session allows you to have that special attention of an industry professional to help you through your most difficult pain points. If you're interested in taking advantage of this one-to-one session, please respond to our follow-up email or email us directly at experts@goamplify.com, and we'll be happy to get you started. We hope that this webinar gave you the opportunity to see what our company has to offer. Let's continue the conversation on how Amplify can help your business with your MDM strategy and consulting services. You will receive your recording by email in the following days, and be sure to keep an eye out for more Ask the Expert sessions. We'll be looking forward to being your trusted resource in the MDM space. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.